for county commissioner and stoked by state and county employees. Oregon's ORS 192504 stipulates required redaction of certain personal information. ORS 135733 prohibits defamation. ORS 31215 addresses the publication of correction or retraction upon demand. There are valid reasons for laws, regulations, rules, as well as policies and procedures. They protect us all. If we don't like them, there are means to effect changes rather than just complaining, blaming, and/or individually deciding which ones should be complied with. I am submitting a package of related documents, so will not beleaguer the facts in this issue. Despite assertions by a staff member of our state representative, I did not spend any county funds on travel of any sort. In fact, I volunteered for over 10 years on the board of the Curry County Commission on Children and Families. I dare say a whole lot of this stuff with Head Start and everything would have been taken care of by them back in the day. The commission, as described in attachments, was a component of a national effort to improve outcomes in communities dealing with poverty, abuse, neglect, violence, substance abuse, and juvenile crime. Curry County has been in the lower quarter of Oregon counties for years. All funding was state or federal and passed through to local nonprofit providers, including CASA, Head Start, Oasis, etc. The funding decisions were based on an RFP process, always with insufficient resources. And in fact, the funds came in at the beginning of the year, they stayed in the county coffers, and the county benefited from the interest that was garnered on those dollars until they were dispersed, because they were dispersed to the agencies on a quarterly basis. The only monthly withdrawals were to administration. The director, who was Myrna Barber, and at that time the administrative assistant, who was Carly Wright. The local commissions were required to be in compliance with established travel policies and often participated in telecommunications for meetings. In addition, an advantage of the Curry County Commission on Children and Families director and board chair being female saved even more funds. Dr. Barber, who wrote the proposal and was awarded the national grant for juvenile prevention, which was around $500,000 if I recall correctly, and I traveled together whenever required and possible, using my car and sharing rooms, saved a great deal of funding. The travel documents include Region 10 training in grant and funding resources for commissions in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. This was the trip to Stevenson. The outcomes included a small grant awarded by the Meyer Foundation, which I wrote, and Myrna's multi-year federal grant. The federal grant required participation in a national conference for all awardees in Washington, D.C. Participation included student representatives, high school teachers, commission board chair, which was me, and the director. The reason for 5 rooms. If one considers a trip to DC in the middle of winter lavish, they should reconsider. Further, it wasn't the Hilton or Mayflower, but the Hampton Inn. A great deal of travel money is saved when teenagers have free breakfasts and evening snacks. As far as the legislative trips to Salem, I was selected by the Oregon Small County Commissions to represent and advocate for their funding at the state budget meetings. These facts certainly can't be expected to change biased beliefs, but perhaps some public officials and employees might acknowledge the constructive roles and contributions volunteers make and encourage citizen participation as stipulated by our state policies. For those who are currently paid by our taxes and those who wish to be, personal attacks on taxpayers are not acceptable. One could only hope that defamation laws would not be required to be brought forward. Attachments include the Oregon Bar definition of libel as communicating a defamatory statement by writing or picture, the referenced Oregon statutes, the documents obtained by public record requests submitted to the Board of Commissioners and published on Facebook, the streaming or steaming Facebook accusations, and corrections to the anonymous, quote, analysis of travel expenditure presented. As an aside, the public records requests submitted for records related to me also include personal information requiring redaction. That's the actual form which was submitted. Despite the fact of the individual's submission, Shalaya Megson states on Facebook that she began the process when I truthfully stated that I had never traveled on county funds, including sojourns to the District of Columbia. The reason that this is really serious is that there are legal issues that are involved here as far as county staff providing information that should have been redacted to the public. And it really just goes forward to the issues of protecting citizens and protecting our county and being mindful of legal requirements. And I appreciate the time and effort put into this, and I appreciate the opportunity to address these very significant issues. Are there any questions?
If I may, Commissioner Boyce. Thank you, Ms. Wiley. The travel you did, do you think that was worthwhile?
Absolutely.
Okay, do you think it was pertinent to helping Curry County?
I know it was.
Okay, and it seems like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the experience I've had with you is that you do not think that travel outside the county is really justified, and a lot of times can be handled by phone, and that's been communicated many times. So I just, yeah, I'll put you on the spot a little bit, because I think you probably have a good answer, I hope you do, that why you think that your travel in those days was more relevant to the travel I have to do nowadays. At least that's the feeling I get, Miss.
I haven't said a word about your travel specifically.
Oh my goodness.
What my recommendation.
Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be out of line there, but you.
I'm sure you didn't.
Yeah, it has been a huge issue, and instead of commending me for staying at Motel 6 and never turning in meals, I've got no encouragement from you, or actually not even from Commissioner Gold, maybe a slight little hint there 3 or 4 months ago, but your travel, I mean, to Washington, D.C., and you have made a tremendous effort.
That was required, Commissioner.
Okay, we can make, that's semantics to me, because, and here's where I want to go with this discussion, and I think maybe it can bear some fruit, I hope, but you have made a tremendous effort, in my opinion, to go challenge the travel from a year ago or 2 years ago, whatever it was, with David Brock Smith, and I've reviewed every bit of that, including a $70 meal he gave me with helped me with, that I didn't know he was paying for, by the way. I didn't know the county was paying for it, but I think that year it was $8,000 that he did total, and the money and the support, as Ted Fitzgerald said last general meeting, Miss Wiley, that poor Commissioner Gold didn't get in the program with FEMA, nor did Ted Fitzgerald, but David Brock Smith did. The point is this: he had to travel, and you had to travel, and I do see a double standard, and it seems really prevalent in the dysfunction of this board when I have to beg for a car, and I get people to say, you charged $1,300 or whatever, and then I would need to justify a minute where I was, which I will do, and I think I have the support of the public, and I think I have the trust of the public, and I think my efforts were very effective. So I don't mean to lecture you here. I apologize. I do want to give you a chance.
Commissioner Boyce, I'm going to ask a point of order, please. This is not the subject. I think I
want you to answer, if you would, please.
You're not
if you
required.
think the travel is a reasonable standard, okay? And
Okay.
And if you can
Not at
encourage
all.
us on the future of that, that's
All I can tell you is I am a citizen that believes in transparency and accountability. You are the one who made the accusation during your campaign that Commissioner Brown and Commissioner Huxley were investigating Mr. Brock Smith's travel. I thought that was,
I never challenged Miss Brown on that. Never.
it was at a campaign.
Yes,
for
he turned in the
You're interrupting me.
Yes.
okay. I need to clarify that's not
But
accurate.
Well, I haven't been able to clarify things that you have said.
Okay.
So, you know, the bottom line is that travel policies are standard. Travel policies are standard in every governmental entity, any entity that has a governmental contract, and that can be backed up by anyone. I advocated for a travel policy. It was not, I did not write the travel policy. I am not hired to do that. I recommended over and over again that there be accountable, transparent travel policies. If you have an issue with the travel policy, I did not write it. I had no part in writing it.
In February 15th, the letter that you brought to the board,
I thank them for writing a policy.
but
I did not
it was
write the policy, Commissioner, and that can be verified by people in this room.
But you challenged me and David Brock Smith.
We're
You
getting
identified.
off the subject, Commissioner. We're getting off the subject.
Okay,
And
I'll
the chair
just ask
can-
one more
can pull us
question, which
back
you
into
can
the
answer if
subject.
you like.
And you're not required to answer anything,
I understand.
Ms. Wiley.
I thank
You're
you.
okay.
You were reimbursed by the county as a volunteer.
I was not reimbursed by the county.
The checks came from the county.
It was not county money. It's called
It came
pass-through.
from the county,
No,
which
it
I'm
came
sure
from
you
the state
deserved.
and the
I
federal
don't have an
government.
issue with that, but the money did come from the county.
It did
okay?
not.
And I don't see a lot of other volunteers over a 10, 15-year period that were reimbursed. Maybe they should have been, but you were reimbursed, and it was a sizable amount of money. And so, yes, it's raised a lot of antennas in the community,
I think,
especially after your letters in February and April regarding my travel and David Brock Smith. Thank you.
That's all. We need to, okay.
thank you.
Okay. So, Commissioner Gold, do you have any comments?
Let me just say that when we have a grant coming to the county, this is not county money. What happens is the county disperses those funds. And so the county gave Ms. Wiley a check, but the money did not come from the county.
I don't take the topic that we're talking about as far as where money came from in 2007. I
Okay.
didn't think that was the topic.
Let me-
here. The
let me
topic
say
was
one
the
other
county
thing.
policy on public records, and I'm
No,
We
I
need
had a
to-
meeting with county council
okay.
and Administrator Hick, and because there are serious legal issues.
You want to come back up, Catherine, please? We need to get that on the record.
So, there are serious legal issues about what the Oregon statutes require to be released in public records and what is prohibited from being released in public records. And there was information that was not redacted in the documents which were provided in accordance with the public records request that should raise concern with the county. The county can be held liable for this, as is anyone who prints that information for the public. It is against the law. And it is an issue why people need policies and procedures, because our government gets into trouble for not being in compliance and ensuring that staff are in compliance and are knowledgeable and have in-service training to know what they're supposed to do.
I think you need to be a little more clear. Tell us exactly what was printed, which should not have been printed or given out, the public information.
Okay, by law, one's personal address is not to be, it is to be redacted because that is considered personal information. In addition, what else was included in these records, which is not stipulated by word, was my bank account number my signature on the checks that were submitted, that were released by the county and submitted into public record without redaction, and also printed on Facebook without redaction. And it's against the law. It's also against the law to post false information. I also included in there, someone called it an analysis. I don't know what kind of scientific background they have. I was not reimbursed thousands of dollars ever. I had no credit card. The only person who was able to make arrangements from the Commission on Children and Families for any travel was the director, and the person who fulfilled her directive as far as travel was at the last time in 2012, 5 years ago. Of course, we've gone back 10 years. We could have gone back 20. There's probably more there. It was Carly Wright. And Carly Wright is listed on those papers as traveling to Boise and so forth, and she is still a county employee. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that if people really wanted to dig in, instead of attacking an individual, that should be looked at. But my primary concern is that my rights have been violated, and they were violated by the county. And so there we are.
Are we going to stay on track, Commissioner Boyce?
Absolutely. No, just a quick question. You mentioned, if I got it right here, Oregon Small County Commission. Was that kind of a Western, or was that part of an Oregon that selected you for that? I've not heard of it before, but I am interested.
Okay. The way that the commissions were varied in each state, Commissioner Boyce. They were set up at the state level. In Oregon, what they did was they had local commissions in each of the 36 counties. Okay. The intent of that was that that when the monies came to the county, that they had representatives on this board that could look at the funds and so forth and so on and distribute them according to what the local needs were. It was kind of looking at things from a grassroots up. Instead of people in Salem deciding what Curry County should have by way of assistance with abuse, with child neglect, with CASA, with everything like that, the money came through the county because there was not a separate bank account, and the county benefited by that because they got the interest from the money. Then it was up to the groups. In different states, it was handled differently, but that's how it was handled in Oregon. And the counties in Oregon are, I'm sure you know, because you go to the meetings, to the county meetings, is that they're divided into small, medium, and large counties. I believe it's been a long time, but there's something like 19 small counties. Each division of counties, in other words, the small counties, the medium counties, and the large counties, had a representative to the state board for budgeting, for finance. And I was selected for the small counties. There was a director and there was a chair of the board who participated in that. And one of the issues with the small counties was the means by which funding was decided at the state level. And the concern was that most of it was based on numbers instead of need. And so looking at some place like Portland as an example, where there are huge numbers and lots of resources, they got allocations by numbers instead of a county like ours that has fewer resources financially, experientially, and any way you could think about it. So we were trying to devise a means by which we could re-look at the budget allocation to try to get increased balance to the funding allocation formula at the state level. And that's what I was selected to advocate for. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and thank you. Are you still involved with CASA?
No.
But you were. So you're very familiar.
Yes.
Okay, you just mentioned a couple times, so I picked up on that as a real positive, and so I'm sure you know.
The way that was, I wasn't directly involved in any of the programs. I was on the board of directors of the commission that reviewed their proposals. Everybody that wanted money put in a request for proposal. We met often, we reviewed the proposals and made the allocations. Some of the funding streams were very specific and couldn't come an inch off of that. Others were more broad, that we could split them up. And I've had a great deal of background in these types of things because of my history. And in addition, I have put down there what the offset, our volunteer time was also offset as in-kind to many of these grants. And quite frankly, my time was put in at $20 an hour. And back in 1977, the federal government was paying me $200 a day. So, it's kind of on the cheap side, if you will. But even our volunteer time and so forth, and none of our in-county travel was reimbursed. It depends on what your travel policy is. It was only paid for when it was out of county or obviously out of state. And the out of state travel was a required travel, just so you know. That's how it was. I didn't develop that policy either.
Okay, but the 11 or 12,000, you're saying that's invalid, that you were reimbursed, and
Absolutely invalid, and I have done a revision to it.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to charge me for partying in 5 rooms in DC, and it wasn't reality.
Well, I wouldn't want to stay with anybody in D.C., frankly, so.
Just saying.
So could we have, would you make that information available to the
It
board?
is in your package.
Oh, in this, what you just handed us?
In
Well, no, it's a big
the
packet.
last page.
Big packet.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Is there anything else?
Maybe. I first for
So one
questions.
last thing on our policies. I know you met with Administrator Hitt and Council Huddle. And are we real clear on our policy as far as the disbursement of funds? Could you maybe give us an update as to, or not funds, but information, public information?
Well, my view of our current policy is that it's not a good policy. I think the problem is it's too dispersed. The whole processing of public records request. I think we need to funnel both the initial request and then the final delivery of the documents, the records, through a single person who then can get the kind of training he or she needs. That way I think it's also somebody to follow up. Public records request is submitted 3 weeks ago. A county clerk, a finance director, what's the status, what's going on? As they're now, they're just kind of sent out to the departments and they just kind of lie there. And most of the time, for example, I don't even know they're there. So at any rate, I'm drafting a new policy, which I hope to bring back to you probably in November.
So that would help us avoid any future liability issues.
Yeah. Again, you can't make a bulletproof policy, but
Right.
you can do policies that will reduce your chances of making an error.
Okay.
And also be more responsive to the records request.
Mr. Chair, just one announcement before anybody
Announcement.
leaves, if I may.
Okay.
Brookings. Before anybody leaves, today at 6:30 to 8, we're having a solutions meeting. We're going to be working very hard on presentation of the Forest Service. Of course, that includes the homeowners that lost their homes. Because she might want to come, and you might want to come, and that's the basis.
I
No,
assumed it was on the same subject, or I would not have.
it is. I
allowed
just
it.
wanted to
Okay.
make that option open
Okay.
before everybody leaves. This is a pretty interesting
so
subject
that-
here, so I apologize if that offended you. Sorry. Anyway, 6:30 downstairs, the Elks Lodge.
Okay.
Love to have you come.
Back on track. I had given, for just information, then I want to ask some questions on this request, okay? I had talked to you some weeks back also on the public records thing. This has been an ongoing, I gave you the existing policy, I
You
gave
did.
you my suggestions a
Right,
year and
and
a
I
half
have
ago.
those. I have
Okay.
those, yes.
But to this records request, and that's the reason, that I was not aware of this records request until actually after the meeting on the 4th of October, when I asked, I think I got back to you, I didn't see them on the materials submitted during the meeting, so you had them put on. The public records request, I don't want to get in, Were you, Commissioner Gold, were you aware that there was a record? I was not until I saw that.
I got a
until I
copy
saw
from
that.
Mr. Jesuit.
Okay, so until that day, I was not aware.
I was not aware of it either.
Were you, Commissioner Boyce, were you aware of that there was a records request?
Yes.
Okay.
No. No, I did not know there was a records request, but I was given the information probably about the same time you received it. Maybe a day ahead. I don't recall.
Okay. So when I looked at this, it was, and I think this is important also because, so I probably saw this 2 days after the 4th, whatever the day was. But the records request is in front of me. It's dated. It's from is it Andre Bay, Andre, or Andre Bay? It was.
August something.
Yeah, there was what was troubling when I saw the records that were provided. These were 10-year-old records. Some of these were 10 years old. Okay, and then when I saw the note at the bottom, it says the payments made to Catherine Wiley are beyond the time requirements to keep the records. So usually when I see it, that's the end of the request. Period. So, but it goes on. So the only copies are front and back copies of the checks written 2010 to 2012. All other records are not available, but I have included reports of the records. We have in the recommended policy that I recommended a year and a half ago. You got the copy several weeks ago that by statute we are not required. The governing body or the custodian is not required to create records that don't exist.
That's correct.
If I had put in a records request like this before I was commissioner, or after I was commissioner, and I've done it as a private citizen, as a commissioner, it would have been declined. Period.
I can
That's the end.
guarantee you it would have taken more than 20 minutes.
That's
also.
the end. Well, it wouldn't have happened because there was no requirement, and I would have been charged. I would have been given an estimate. This is what it's going to cost if you want us. We're not obligated. If you, that usually ends the conversation right there. But if you want to pursue it and be a pain, we might. But we're not obligated to do anything. So this was above and beyond, and like you say, it was for half an hour time to do all that? There was another, on these reports. That's concerning.
Right.
Okay.
And I think that's part of what needs to be done in the policy. Is
Well,
to better
yeah, I mean,
define-
I've never seen it before. It
Yeah,
was like,
okay.
what was behind that? Then there was a note on the end here, and while it's difficult to read, it helped when I highlighted it. On the last page, it says, does not include airfares. Don't worry, Commissioner. And it's singular, it's not commissioners. Commissioner, ... I know how important it is for you to get important docs, DOXS, into the record. So it's here. Admin hit, can you take care of that? I'm assuming I'm the commissioner, but I'm just assuming. I don't think it's Commissioner Gold or Commissioner Boyce. I don't know who Andre Bay is. I have no idea who he is.
I don't either.
He could be in the audience and I wouldn't know it. But so I was not aware. Now, you said you weren't aware until you saw it. Commissioner, and I get a little, I just say, not intrusive, but you mentioned you knew a day or so or two before these records were provided. Did you know that Ted Fitzgerald was going to provide the records in the meeting?
I know that he had access to the records, yes.
Okay.
The only reason that I made the note, I don't mean to interrupt, but
Oh, was that your note?
no.
Oh,
The
I was
only
gonna say,
reason that I
boy.
made the note about Shalaya was that according to her own words, it wasn't Andre Bay who initiated this investigation. It was Shalaya.
You mean that was
It's in
behind
the
the request?
documentation that you have from the Facebook streams.
I don't have any.
Yes,
in the
you
bottom.
do. You
It's-
have a
it's-
whole
it's there.
bag.
Oh, I'm
of
sorry, in the
documents.
packet that you
Right.
just gave us.
Right,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. Oh, okay.
The documentation is all there, including the specific stipulations of, including the Oregon statutes themselves, as well as a legal
Okay.
definition that I'm sure Mr. Huddle could have comments on of what defamation is and what slander and libel are in this state. And what has occurred is very, very serious, and I have some very serious decisions to make about it.
Again, Commissioner Boyce, this is not an interrogation, okay? But, so you were aware a day or two before that Ted Fitzgerald, because I hadn't seen him in a long time,
I answered that.
was going to submit the records or had the records or had access to these records? Is that-
That's correct.
Okay, and did you know he was going to submit them?
No, I don't. If this is a legal matter, I don't know if I will answer that right now. It
Okay.
seems to be growing in the complexity.
Okay, in the audience now okay. You can set by example, ladies, please. Yeah, there are clearly some serious things. There are some other documents I will share with you separately
Thank you.
that go to some of my questions that I've just asked.
Thank you.
Here.
And, there's a whole lot of things, and people have their opinions and their perceptions of me and so forth and so on. Comment have been made, I'm opinionated. I'm very opinionated. I'm very hard-headed. I can be very strident. There's a lot of things that I can say. Stupid I am not. There is no way I would ever recommend a travel policy if I had something in my closet that was going to expose hypocrisy on my part. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess are we okay to go to the next? Community Development Department reorganization discussion. Calvin Johnson, Community Development Director.